252365. Private George Halifax White. George Halifax White was born on the 28th of June, 1903, in Cape Town, South Africa, to George Arthur Wellesley Halifax White and Mary White. He was the eldest of the 6 White children. His father, George Sr., homesteaded south of Waldeck at Burnham. While George Jr. was really only 12, on his attestation papers, he states that he was born on the 28th of June, 1901, making him 14 years old. George Jr. enlisted in the 209th Overseas Swift Current Battalion on the 6th of March, 1916. In Swift Current, George Jr. was found to be fit for service that same day. He was a student, or rather a schoolboy, by trade. He was single and as such listed his next of kin as his father George Sr. Upon enlistment, George Jr. was described as being roughly 14 years of age, 5 foot to 5 foot 2 inches tall, weighing 110 pounds, with a fair complexion, blue eyes, and brown hair. In addition, it was noted by the medical officer that his physical development was progressing, and that he did not have any distinctive marks, such as scars. He was noted to be able to play the bugle, and was part of the 209th Battalion Band. In addition, he would serve as the battalion's bugle boy. His father, George Sr., was also a member of the 209th Battalion, having enlisted on the 15th of March, 1916, just 9 days after his young son. Like the others in the 209th Battalion, he underwent initial training in Swift Current during the winter of 1916. In early May, he was hospitalized with a mild bout of scarlet fever. By late spring, the battalion was to proceed to Camp Hughes, formerly called Camp Sewell. And after a farewell celebration held at the Princess Royal Theatre in Swift Current, an advance party left Swift Current on the 31st of May, 1916. The rest of the 209th followed the advance party on the 1st of June. The 209th remained at Camp Hughes for a couple of months, and on the 15th of August that same year, the men were given harvest leave. They were granted leave as many of the men serving in the battalion were farmers and ranchers by trade. George Jr.'s father, George Sr., was a farmer by trade, and would have likely returned home to partake in the year's harvest. It is also likely that George Jr. would have returned to Burnham to help his father with the harvest, as he was the eldest child. Most of the furloughed men had returned on the 15th of September, as the 209th was to proceed to the east coast of Canada to embark for duty overseas. On the 9th of October 1916, George Jr. and the rest of the 209th boarded a train that took them to Digby, Nova Scotia. They arrived in Digby on the 14th and spent roughly 2 weeks camped along the shore. On the 30th, once again, George Jr. and the 209th boarded yet another train. This time they were headed to the port city of Halifax, Nova Scotia. The 209th arrived in Halifax on the 1st of November, 1916, and immediately boarded the SS Coronia, a steam-powered ocean liner that had been converted into a troop ship. The Coronia sailed that same day in a convoy of troop ships under naval escort. The journey from Halifax to Liverpool took roughly 10 days. The journey for the most part was quiet, save for several false alarms related to the presence of enemy submarines. By the 10th of November, the Coronia had rendezvoused with a couple of British destroyers and a cruiser. The Coronia was then given orders to proceed at best speed to the Mersey. The following day, the 209th disembarked in the British port city of Liverpool. Upon disembarking, George and the 209th boarded a train that took them to Shorncliffe. After detraining at Shorncliffe, the battalion marched in the drizzling rain to their new home, a camp at St. Martin Plain. 16 days after having arrived in the United Kingdom, George Jr. was transferred from the 209th Battalion to the 34th Battalion. The 34th Battalion at that time was stationed at Shoreham, Sussex. Not long after having arrived in England, George's former unit, the 209th Battalion, would be earmarked for disbandment, and its personnel was to be used to reinforce units already at the front and that had suffered severe casualties. In late January 1917, George was to proceed to the Canadian Discharge Depot, located in Buxton, Derbyshire, and on the 20th of March 1917, he was struck from strength of the Canadian Discharge Depot. He was then to proceed to Canada for discharge, and as such was transferred to the Saskatchewan Regimental Depot. George Jr. sailed home to Canada aboard the SS Scandinavian and was officially discharged from the Canadian Expeditionary Force on the 1st of April 1917 at the discharge depot located in Quebec. He was discharged via reason of being a minor and was not eligible for service overseas until the 28th of June 1922. He was not to be drafted into the military before that date. At the time of his discharge, the truth had come out, as his discharge documents show that he was 13 years old and planned to return to Burnham. Sadly, his father George Sr. would be killed in action on the 20th of April 1917 at Arleux and Goal. For his service to Canada, George Halifax White was awarded the British War Medal and the Victory Medal,